challenge anyone in the world.
We had the tri-D competitions for baseball and football, and it was a good rivalry like you'd expect among any middle school kids. But on the other hand, because we were all expats out there was also a sense that it was family. So even though you wanted to beat Abcake in the baseball game, they were also your friends.
Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts was a big deal inside.
The best thing about Boy Scouts is that you got to go camping. And my favorite place for camping was a place called Scribner's Canyon out near Abcake. And this is a very, it would almost be like the Badlands region, sort of like the Roadrunner cartoons. They have big cliffs and steep gullies and such.
We'd camp and cook as groups. So we'd have large frying pans. We had 3-foot round frying pans. Scour out the inside, but then they were sooty and black on the outside. So we'd tie them behind the Jeeps and ride them across the dunes.
The Girl Scout campouts were awesome, too. They used to have 4-day campouts for all the girls. And, of course, it was cold water we'd take showers with, but it was right on the shore of Half Moon Bay.
It was fun. We'd planned this ahead of time. All our meals were planned because we had to take everything with us. And they would bring in a big reefer truck. And that would keep our food refrigerated, and each day they'd come in with fresh water and whatever we needed.
We would go to the beach, cook out. In one part of the beach, the sand dunes were probably, I'm thinking now, probably 50 meters high, but maybe not that high. And we'd climb up the backside of the sand dune, and the big thrill was to then run off the top of the sand dune, do as many forward somersaults as you could do, hit in the sand, tumble down, and you go right into the Gulf. There was a nice drop off there.
Beaches, well, the beach, going up on the sand dune and at night when it was like the weather was nice and balmy and everything, and then just the sand just like covering your body, you know? Oh, that was awesome.
Half Moon Bay Yacht Club was pretty much where we spent most of our weekends on Thursdays and Fridays back when I was growing up with my dad. He bought an old 21-foot Lightning class sailboat, and it didn't have a bottom on it. So one of the projects that my brother and my father and I did was, for one summer, is we put a plywood bottom and fiberglass that sailboat together. And then when we were done with that, we sailed around Half Moon Bay at the regattas and gave us about 3 or 4 years of pure enjoyment in the summers.
Aramco offered Dow trips and a Red Sea trip to returning students. They do this all the time. And what happens, everyone would get on a boat. It was an old wooden Dow, which is an old boat. And we'd all go over to an island, right? There's an island, a lot of us would go to Dre Island, which was just amazing. They'd have sea turtles that were huge out there. Anyway, you'd all go out on this, putt out on this thing. It was a day trip. You get out there and you put on, everyone would be, you know, hanging out and then in the sun, and then all of a sudden you just put on your tanks of scuba gear, you jump in the water, and you just get to be under there for a couple hours just scuba diving and seeing the most beautiful things. Huge turtles, dolphins, all sorts of gorgeous sea creatures in gorgeous colors. It was just amazing. I mean, some of the best diving, well, not some of the best, I've been everywhere. And Australia, I mean, even the Great Barrier Reef, I'm telling you that this was the best diving in the world in terms of color and amount of small fishes and just the aliveness of the Northern Ocean.
I could never get over the color of the water and the fish. They couldn't pull me out. You know, the boat was leaving and I was still in the water swimming.
One of the biggest events in Aramco community was the annual AEA fair, and as a child, we used to count the days towards when that fair was, and our parents would give us 10 reals, and we'd run around and have the most fun, meeting up with friends and just doing stupid stuff on the rides and having so much fun. It was a blast.
I remember there were certain booths that had the good candy, so you'd always try to get there early. I remember one of them had Pop Rocks. Remember that candy?
Oh.
So you'd always like beeline it right to the the grape or the cherry, and they would always run out first. So you were unlucky if you didn't get there in time.
Every art group would have their own booth and their own float.
you had the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the hobby farm had a float, and you wanted to be part of the parade. Everybody wanted to be in the parade or watch it. I mean, you did not go to the AEA Fair parade.
The AEA Fair was kind of, that one time during the year where, everyone would really come together as a community, and it's just amazing. It was kind of such a unique situation.
Ras Tanura had something, because it was a refinery town and a new refinery, the production was going up as units came online. So as an excuse for a big holiday, they'd have something like, I might not have these figures quite right, but the general idea is that we're going to celebrate 100,000 barrel day, which means they went 100,000 barrels of crude got processed. And then a year later, they celebrate 200,000 barrel day or 300,000 barrel day, and it kept climbing. And when they had these, they'd have big picnics on the beach, and there were like an American picnic with hot dogs and mustard and all that sort of thing, but there were two things that made them special for Saudi Arabia. One were the donkey races, and they would bring these big donkeys in from Qatif. Saudi Arabia in those days had donkeys, which I think if they had developed a breeding industry, they could have exported them all over the world because they were really big, strong donkeys. They almost looked like a small horse. And they were sometimes white, and they would be covered with red henna, which was the way they'd brand them. And you could sort of guess which donkey is going to win just by looking at how tall it was in the hips or something. You could sort of figure it out.
Definitely, I think one of the great things about being a Aramco brat were all the youth centers we had and the game rooms we had, all the arcades and pool tables and ping pong. I think we all, got into that, and the cheese pizzas next door were a big hit.
Yeah, I think we all became semi-pros of playing Miss Pac-Man, Sinistar.
That's because the
Spy Hunter.
The price was 25 halal. So, you could play all day for about $5, which is a pretty good deal.
Living in Arabia, you did learn to entertain, and you learned to provide and create your own entertainment.
Oh, you had to make your own entertainment.
You had to make your own entertainment. And the people there who I met that were miserable and unhappy were people that didn't have that ability or didn't even want to foster it. Because I think that's one of the great things that sets people apart who've had that a great Aramco experience.
Talk about creating your own fun. We would call, my brother and I would get in our car, we'd bring a bunch of water balloons, and we'd call people ahead of time and say, hey, why don't you come outside and let's go out and hang out. Well, when they came outside, we'd peg them with water balloons from the car, drive off, and leave, and then come back later, try to invite them out again, peg them. And it was just hilarious. I probably wouldn't fly anywhere else.
I just remember that long walk along the beach, that long sidewalk. In fact, I even have dreams about it still.
There was a game we used to play called Fox and Hound. And most of us didn't have horses, but we had friends that had horses. And we'd go out to Imhoff Gardens, we'd take the bus out, and we'd wait kind of nervously as our friends saddled up their horses. And they would give us a half hour to go out into Imhoff Gardens and hide in the alfalfa and the bamboo shoots and all. And we'd hide, and then a half hour later, they'd ride out after us hunting. And there's nothing like a feel of terror, like running across an alfalfa field with somebody on horseback chasing after you at full gallop to get the excitement out of you. It was just a tremendous experience, and no one else I know has ever had that.
Favorite food? Wow, it's a tough one. Hummus. I go with the classic hummus.
Have to be the shawarma.
Shawarmas! Yay, shawarmas.
Food was incredible, especially during Ramadan. The shawarmas.
We took advantage of the shawarma.
Yeah. They cooked shawarmas on the side of the road. That was always fun too.
The falafels. Or like cheese bread or za'atar bread or that stuff. Like, I mean, I really miss that stuff.
Cheese bread from Latif Bakery.
I remember there was just dripping cheese and there was nothing better. It only cost $1, so I mean, I'd have like these fantasies about taking boxes back to boarding school.
It was like I think it was an Arab bread similar to pita bread. It was like that, and hummus.
Sambusa, shawarma. Sambusa's gonna run a close second to shawarma. Very close second.
It has to be kubsa.
Kabsa rice and kabsa, the way they bring it out, on a big silver tray, like just a carcass without a head, that they put in an oven, and they put every other smorgasbord in that rice with whole tomatoes and everything else, and they say, okay, they sit it down in front of you, you're sitting on the floor, and they say, eat it with your right hand. You're like, that's it.
On camp, we used to go to the dining hall a lot every Wednesday night with shrimp night, and we'd go to the dining hall and just eat shrimp.
Sambusa and kibbeh.
Remember the chickens?
In Medina, outside of Abcake, you could go get a whole chicken and a stack of fresh cooked bread in the stone oven for about 6 reals, which is equivalent to about $2.
Well, I kind of missed the rice curry and camel. It was good.
Baba ganoush and hummus and all that.
The one thing that I really miss is the milk that came in the little cartons. Remember the from Holland, I think, it was very very strong milk.
And lion bars. Those were really good.
Marinda.
Team.
Africola.
Oh, Orangina, but Orangina they have in the
Oh, I
States.
love Orangina.
The kuftas.
Bimto.
Oh, man.
Shawarmas. Oh, man, yeah.
Shawarmas. Gotta love the shawarmas.
Tabbouleh, hummus with couscous and kabsa.
Waffles. Shawarmas, man. No. Nice piece of meat, just cut it off there, just eat it.
And you can't get the same kind of food here. You really can't.
Falafel stuffed in the pitas. Much better than pitas. Debate to be continued.
It was a shocker going from Saudi to boarding school. At first you're excited.
Oh, yeah.
And then once you got there, you're like, man, my friends, I miss my friends.
What an incredible change.
All the kids went away to the schools in the U.S. or somewhere in Europe without their parents. Can you imagine nowadays sending a 14-year-old to the other side of the world saying, Johnny, here's your ticket, here's your passport, here's some American Express traveler's checks. Make sure you get to school all right. It just doesn't happen. We were pretty much asked to be responsible for ourselves at a very young age and responsible for your friends, making sure that they get to where they needed to go at the same time. And I think that kind of a growth period at a very young age gave a lot of us the ability to succeed later on in life because we were able to take responsibility for ourselves.
And I was sent right off to school in Switzerland in September. We got there in July. And I went to Montana College in Zugerberg, Switzerland. It's very unique. It was up on the top of a mountain. I learned how to ski very well. It's some very important people there. And being a brat, you know, you get to see a lot of the world and you get to meet a lot of very influential people. The King of Spain today, Juan Carlos, he was there. Mussolini's grandson was there. And my roommate's great-great-grandfather was Walter Reed. And his father was a brigadier general in the U.S. Army in Wurzburg, Germany, which we got to visit during spring break. And get around two teenage kids driving around in a staff car, everybody saluting at us. It was quite unique.
Well, Aramco used to have their own airline for quite a few years back in the older days, and they flew, I don't know, what kind of planes were they?
DC-6s.
DC-6s. There was the Flying
Maybe
Camel,
7s.
the Flying Gazelle, and the Flying Oryx.
Our flights, we would always, the kids would come together, we'd all meet in New York, and then we'd get a group together and we'd go into Amsterdam. And you have to remember that these were kids that started out on their own at 14 years old. And we would always gather in New York and then take our trips back. And then coming back to the States, often we would take side trips through New York or through Europe, just however we wanted to go.
Kind of took a few breaks to figure out so what are we going to do with ourselves for these 3 months of summer, and so kind of had a lot of time to kill, and we generally did it in some interesting ways. Waking up every day around crack of noon and heading to the pool, soaking up some sun, maybe playing some water volleyball, hitting the snack bar and getting a sambusa and a cheese pizza, and then relaxing through the dinner hours and heading out to the student recreation center, maybe playing some volleyball, pool, ping pong until around 11 or so, heading over to people's houses and just having a good time.
I just remember how Aramco really took care of us. You know, they took the time
to put programs together to support the returning students, and just so many things we wanted to do. They even offered us jobs and paid us good money to work for the company.
I guess what's funny to me is how annoyed all of my friends get of me constantly talking about my experiences living abroad.
I think we took a lot of stuff for granted and just thought of the way that we lived as normal. And it wasn't until you went away to school that you became exposed for the first time to this idea that people live different ways and they might not understand the way you grew up. I think that's given us a tremendous advantage in understanding immigrants and people from other cultures.
As I grew older, I realized one of my biggest dreams was to see the full Saudi picture and to get outside of Aramco and leave Dhahran and see some other places within Saudi. And I'm a free spirit. I wanted to do that by myself, and so I bicycled around a little bit, and I also took a dirt bike, and I rode this dirt bike from Dhahran to Greece. And in Saudi, I did a big loop. I went to Bereda, which is like supposedly the farm belt of Saudi Arabia, and met up with some really cool Saudis there. And they invited me in. I spent the night there. They fed me so much food, kabsa and rice and chicken and strawberry milkshakes and stuff. I was treated like royalty. It was a really cool experience, and I went all the way to the Red Sea coast and drove up north and stopped off at every little village along the way, and it was the most amazing trip I've ever had.
My father got his doctorate. His project for his communication doctorate was to build or rebuild the Dhahran telephone exchange. And, I don't know, it seemed like it took forever. I'm sure it didn't, but he worked on it for a long time because I know my mother used to complain about him going off to Dhahran all the time and not taking her shopping. Actually, she didn't have a problem with him going, but all the great, the mom and Kuba were in the middle where all the great shopping is, and she always wanted to go.
The Gold Souks were a favorite place for me because I was a young man, and I was always interested in getting names in Arabic for my girlfriends and buying gold and jewelry and just the sheer quantity of it and the display and the lights, and coupling that with all of the sounds and smells of Khobar and Dammam were just so special for me at the time.
I remember the first mall that we used to shop at when I was younger was Al Shula, but at some point the Al Shula mall burnt to the ground. And now they have this mall called the Rashid, and it's just a massive castle. It's the most insane mall I've ever seen in my life.
There actually was a JCPenney's. When I left there was a JCPenney in the mall there, which blew our minds. So as years went on, it wasn't as necessary to wait until you went to the States to do your shopping. It's now grown considerably in that aspect over there, and you can pretty much buy whatever you need.
Speaking just for myself, my family made a habit of taking bus rides, going to places like Hofuf, Katif, going to the markets, getting in. I mean, they're like the camel markets in Hofuf were amazing. It's just thousands and thousands. It's really funny that my family's into ranching, so to see the Saudi agriculture and livestock, it's kind of cool to see that from a completely different perspective.
Somewhere in 1964, we went out on vacation and we flew to England and bought a Land Rover because it was becoming popular to go out in the desert, exploring and just finding artifacts and things like that. And so we drove the Land Rover all the way from England down through Europe, through Turkey, through Syria and Jordan, into Iraq, and into Saudi Arabia. And that was, me and my sisters and my mom and dad, was quite an adventure.
All through the years, we've done all these trips every year to the Rubicali, particularly around Christmas time.
And we've never, I don't think we've ever missed a year. Now, it's every December, we go out. And I have to say, quite honestly, that's probably one of the most beautiful places on earth is Rubicali, and not enough people get to experience it.
places you got to go living over there were just incredible. And I think that's one of the things that everyone always remembers.
For ramp-cons, the reason why people fall in love with them so much is they're so interested, and they're always, bringing up something because they've experienced everything firsthand. They've gone to those countries. They've actually talked with the people. They've lived in those places and actually been able to, they weren't scared of the actual environment they were in.
Hong Kong, Singapore, Hawaii, and then coming to the States for a while and traveling all around, and then we went to Europe, and this was all on one trip.
It makes the world seem like a smaller place to you. The whole boarding school experience, every time I flew to or from Saudi Arabia, for any reason, whether it was going on vacation somewhere or going back to my boarding school, you always ran into other Aramcons in the airports, whether it was in Amsterdam or at London Heathrow. You always ran into people that you knew.
It was just a good experience, and it just made me more worldly and not scared to travel all over the world.
Nothing was ever better than having that experience. And the travels that we had then and the travels that we do now, and the way that I'm raising my children because of the experience that we had, just taking them and showing them the culture and having them live in the different areas that we go to, not just to see what it's like a Disneyland tour, but just so get to know some people and learn about the culture and learn about the world.
We don't really like to watch the news because we don't feel that the news is actually giving us an accurate portrayal of what's actually happening on the ground. And I think that's a big disservice for most of the West. And I think their own media is just as guilty as the Western media, is not actually portraying what's actually going on the ground in Saudi Arabia, on the ground in Kuwait, in the UAE, in Oman.
The media oftentimes tries and give just a partial picture, kind of immediate. They serve an immediate sensation. They try and run the story and get the story out fast, and in doing so, sometimes they don't get the whole side of it.
I think the media should be talking to people who lived in Saudi Arabia, who know what real Saudis are like and where their hearts are.
And the kind of coherence that existed between what we call Aramco expatriates and mainly the Westerns, whether European or Americans, it actually was a kind of atmosphere and living conditions where it was fruitful to both. The Saudis actually liked to work with the Americans. They enjoyed actually the cultural habits of the American people. The Saudi people are very hospitable and friendly people, and there was no problem in having the two societies really blend in a very productive and coherent matter. I think what you hear a lot about in the media is a complete misconception. I don't think that there was a better relationship in any society than existed, better than what existed between the Westerns and mean Americans, Europeans, and the Saudi people.
I think that the media needs to take a look at what its true purpose and definition in a journalistic sense, what the true definition of journalism is. Because if you look in colleges, the old colleges of old would teach that you tell the whole story and you don't insert your opinion. And I think today's media has gone from a true reporting a story to more of an editorial on the story.
We don't get the Saudi side here in America. All we get is the negativity. And as a person in the media, it hurts. We don't want to hear all the good things that are going on. We don't want to hear about all the people that are trying their hardest to, create better business relations. They're trying to change their country. Saudi is in flux right now. They've had a growing period of civil rights and elections for the first time this year than any other year in since. And it's difficult to sit back and listen to the headlines of negativity between what insurgents and what other militant people do, when really the average Joe who owns a shop or the average person just wants their kids to go to school, and in a way they see the prosperity that's going on within their own country as a Western thing, not just an American thing, but as a prosperity thing. And I think that there's a small minority, just like here in America, there's a small minority of people that don't want change and that are negative to anything that's not status quo. And I think in Saudi, there's more social change in Saudi Arabia that's happening right now than there is even in our own country.
Many people today don't really understand, there's stereotypes, they say, oh, okay, you lived in a tent or you rode a camel to school or something silly. But once you explain it to them, and they kind of understand it, you just have to, I guess, give them some more details, and they soon understand, what it was like for me to live in Saudi Arabia. That it wasn't like it's depicted on TV.
بعد نصف عام من مباحثات متعثرة، العراق بلا حكومة جديدة، والصراع للوصول إلى سدة الحكم على أشده في ظل تصعيد أمني خطير. متى ستنتهي أزمة تشكيل الحكومة العراقية؟ وهل للأطراف الإقليمية يد في استمرارها؟
القيادي في ائتلاف دولة القانون علي الأديب.
من سيحكم العراق مع سهير القيسي؟
الاثنين 7:00 على شاشة العربية.
اسطنبول عشق المكان.
شي بيشرح الآن.
هنالك دائما سبب للاستمتاع بالسفر مع طيران ناس.
I'm a terrible person 'cause I've let her on.
CH Man, the new fragrance for men by Carolina Herrera. CH Man, the new fragrance for men by Carolina Herrera.
طيران ناس ما يضيع وقتي.
هنالك دائما سبب للاستمتاع بالسفر مع طيران ناس.
جو، جمال وحضارة. تركيا.
I also think that Aramco brats have a sense of where their place in the world, and I think they probably might be more sympathetic to international causes, like perhaps the tsunami disaster, or what's going on in Iraq, or any other numerous political events.
When all this terrorist stuff came about and everyone was all anti-Muslim, anti-this, I wasn't, because I knew what they were like.
People of different cultures are actually working together, they're actually getting along, they're actually learning from one another. So we wish that the rest of the world could see what we see and not what they see. And if they could only remove the filter and the prism that they look at American and Arab relations through, I think the world would be a lot better off.
Leaving, I cried. I was really sad having to leave all my friends and knowing that I'd never be able to go back. It was just It was really stressful.
I was miserable. It was the worst thing. I wanted to go back. That's when I really learned to appreciate where I was raised, born and raised.
It was a hard transition, you know, for some of the ones, and I've talked to other people that did not have an easy time assimilating back. Coming back to the United States was culture shock because it was totally different from the environment that we grew up in.
I remember leaving Saudi Arabia August 14th, 1990, under the pretense that I was going to see it again. We were evacuating Desert Storm, but this was still just going to be like a short vacation. And as it turns out, I never saw it again. I never stepped foot in Saudi. And that, I can honestly say that torments me, and it has for a little over 16 years. I dream about it often, and every time it seems a little bit more real, you know, my alarm goes off.
I said, that was my home. Yeah. I mean, everybody loves their home. It was my home.
I always think that the reason why I miss it so much is because I took advantage of the times that I had while I was there. Like, because if I wouldn't have taken advantage of it, if I wouldn't have known how much I had, I mean, I think that's kind of like thinking in the past. I think the reason why we did know what we had when we were there, and we lived it in the moment, and that's why we miss it so much.
It's given me a lot of opportunity to see the world and to grow much more than I think I would have if I had lived in the States all my life.
Just in general, since leaving Saudi Arabia and coming to the States, as well-meaning as most of the people that I've met here in the States have been, a lot of times there's just there's no understanding. The experiences we've had are so unique that you can't really relate them.
It's very hard to try and pass on to someone else the experiences that we had growing up.
Trying to explain it to someone back here in the States is frustrating.
You can't. They don't get it.
I don't think unless you were there you could truly understand what it was like. The chance to live there with American people, yet experience the other culture.
That was a great place. It was just a wonderful opportunity. The majority of the people we speak to who are not part of the Aramco BRAC community cannot understand or fathom the liberties we had, plus the opportunities we had, much less the responsibilities and the requirement for us to grow very early, very independently.
It was a very big part of who I am and what I am, and an exciting part.
We were so different. We came back to the States, and I would tell people I was from San Francisco because it was such a complicated question to answer. Where are you from?
The answer that I give today is that I'm from everywhere. I'm a citizen of the world.
But I really made some good friends off the bat, friends for life, friends that are here today, and I wouldn't trade that for the world.
I find it's very rare that people keep in touch with people they went to school with from kindergarten, you know, when they were 4 or 5 years old up until I'm now 40, and have quite a, you know, close circle of friends that I've been able to remain in contact with.
I think living overseas made us very patriotic. I think as a group we're probably more patriotic than a lot of Americans of the same age. But it also made us appreciate other cultures.
We all developed a real appreciation for Saudi culture and their religion, Islam. And the ones that we met developed an appreciation for our culture. They were very thankful, I think, for what we were doing to contribute to the country, and we were very thankful for their hospitality, that we could be there and we could help in their development.
And I guess I would like to admit that as I was growing up, I didn't appreciate the experience I had, and every year that I've gotten older, I realized how fortunate I was.
And I feel very fortunate to have had an opportunity to have learned so much, seen so much.
Oh, the whole environment, it was one of the great things, and it's still it's a beautiful thing.
I feel so lucky that I had the opportunity to live with all of them and be their friend. I can't really say friend because we were more than friends. Like, we hang out together all the time. We were neighbors. We went to the same programs, the same recreations. I spent a lot of time with them. I even sometimes spent I spent more time with them than I spent with my family.
still, this is my 52nd summer there. So
the perspective that was given to me as an individual to experience that is so broad and wide that I think it's made me a more tolerant person when it comes to diversity in culture and other people's personalities and perhaps ways of life. So that's something I think is non-tangible that we all share amongst ourselves, and I don't know if we actually consciously acknowledge that, but we definitely have it going on in an unspoken manner between ourselves.
Really unified my entire family to have the experience of being in Saudi, and I wouldn't trade the experience for the world. It was the best thing I ever did.
This was where you were going to have an association that would last your entire lifetime, and when you felt like you were alone or you felt like you had nothing or your family was gone, or I don't know what the circumstance, but you could think back that there were 700, 800, 1,000, 2,000 people that had the same upbringing as you did, lived in the same places as you did, and they were your family.
That's why I love these reunions, and it's each time I see one that I haven't seen, you know, and in the last reunion, I feel as if I've seen a member of my family, except they were 5 and now they're 40 plus. So, but we still have that same feeling when we see each other.
But that's Aramco. You know different people, and they know someone else, and then when you get together, you're like family. And the Aramco family is extremely important. It's been vital in many, many ways.
And I recommend it to anybody again. It was fun. It was really, truly fun.
People, the friends we made, and the connections we made.
It's memories that I'll probably never forget in my life. And it ties into these reunions that we do every 2 years. You come back and you see the faces of the people that made it happen. And it's just a fantastic environment that we grew up in, and a bond that we'll probably never forget or let go of.
I wish more people had the opportunity to live in another culture, because I think it would contribute to peace in the world.
I'm 68 years old now, and I say I've done because of this experience, it was life-changing for me, because we were just an average family up in New England when we lived there, and when we came up, we got to travel the world and got to meet a lot of very nice people and see all the things in the world that most people don't ever see and appreciate, and it really broadened my horizon and gave me the self-confidence and the enthusiasm that I have to do what I want to do, and consequently I've been pretty successful in my life, and I attribute it to my father bringing us to Saudi Arabia and making our life completely different.
Finally, we have an opportunity to share what we have held inside for so long and what people have, refused to or hesitantly listened to us about.
I think it's like my personal mission almost to bore the heck out of the world with how great Saudi Arabia and America are, and us getting along, how great their culture is, and the things that you're not hearing, because I think the world needs to hear it. Most of the world likes happy endings. If you do, I've got one for you. And they lived happily ever after, to do with Arab-American relations. And what I want to pass on to future generations, I'm going to make sure that that happens. I'm an Aramco brat.
Expat, mixed bread into forever, right back. Yuppie comedy with hospitality for a laugh track. And our seasons, they all have breaks to get back to the places we came from and best times that we lacked. But still we all loved it so. And if you had to ask me where I'd like to go, I'd say back to the dome, where the only things untouched were carhoods and cartoons. Take a dip in a pool, and I didn't consider a day off a fool. But it wouldn't be the same 'cause I was there without you. Salam alaikum to your mama near my city, marhaba. You say the will of God, see me, I'm always thinking inshallah. I miss the hummers and blows in the swarm of stairs, separated by words but living similar ways. Damn, I miss it so. And if you went up and asked me where I'd like to go, I'd say back to the dunes, take a long bus trip and snap some pictures of rooms, ride a horse through the desert, before we cross the channel. Sure, I'd break a rule or two, but it wouldn't be the same 'cause I was there without you.
ولكن الصيادين المذعورين انهالوا بالأغصان على النمر إلى أن قرر أن هذه الوجبة مضنية أكثر مما تستحق العناء. أصيب آشيت بأذى بالغ، فأنياب النمر قد انغرزت إلى داخل جمجمته، ولكنه نجا. كيف تقذف القطط العملاقة نفسها خارج الماء مطاردة فريستها؟ فيل رايزر حارس في حديقة الحيوانات في برونكس يبحث عن إجابة عن هذا السؤال. عمل فيل مع النمور لمدة 7 أعوام، واليوم يستعد ليكتشف إلى أي علو يستطيع هذا النمر السيبيري المقيم الذي يدعى ساشا القفز. النمور السيبيرية هي أكبر النمور على وجه الأرض، يصل وزنها إلى 294 كيلوغراما وطولها إلى 3 أمتار. ولكن على غرار أقربائها النمور البنغالية طورت طريقة لتحويل هذا الجسم الضخم إلى آلة طيران عالية التحكم. يرفع فيل قطعة طعام كبيرة خاصة بالقطط حوالي 4 أمتار عن الأرض، يأمل بأن يطالها ساشا بقفزة عملاقة واحدة. دخل ساشا إلى حقل التجربة وشعر بوجود الطعام على الفور. محاولته الأولى فشلت، فأنزل فيل اللحم لمسافة قصيرة. لوى ساشا جسمه استعدادا للقفز، وهذه المرة أوقع الطريدة. مراجعة قفزة ساشا تظهر تماما كيف يقفز النمر عموديا باتجاه فريسته. الهجوم الهوائي يبدأ بعضلات ساق ساشا القوية. 6 مجموعات أساسية من العضلات مصممة لدفع جسمه إلى الأمام أو حتى إلى الهواء مباشرة، رافعة جسمه الثقيل إلى مسافة تبلغ 3 أمتار تقريبا. ثم تبلغ قائمتا ساشا الأماميتان أعلى ارتفاع ممكن، ما يضاعف وصوله إلى الفريسة. مخالب ساشا تعمل مباشرة قبل الاصطدام، فتحرص ألا يفلت منها ما ستلتقطه. تستلم المخالب المهمة عندما يبلغ ساشا ذروة قفزته، يرجع إلى الأرض وفريسته في يده. قفزة ساشا على اليابسة قد تعطينا فكرة عن طريقة قفز النمور الساندربانية خارج الماء. قفزة من تحت الماء تتطلب القوة العضلية ذاتها التي تحتاج إليها قفزة على اليابسة. عندما تخرج القطة الكبيرة من المياه تمد قائمتيها الأماميتين عاليا في الهواء حتى تبلغ المسافة القصوى. وتماما مثل ساشا، عندما يبلغ النمر المائي ذروة قفزته تخرج المخالب وتنغرز في الضحية، جاذبة إياها إلى الماء.